Yeah, you just go whenever because we'll just clip the intro at this after the intro, whatever else.
Okay. Uh, all right then. And actually, you know what? Just play. Let's run the intro. Run the intro.
All right. Okay. It's a step forward.
And
welcome
make
to
me
the-
look so evil with the smile. Like that smile is so sinister. I like it, but like,
And take 3. Run it back again. Welcome to the Then and Now podcast, the best podcast in the world. Today we're getting a little more introspective, which is why I'm speaking to do the intro as opposed to Mr. C. Diesel himself. We're going to be interviewing Mr. C. Diesel. It's a little series where we're going to get to know each of the co-hosts on the show, leading up to a big surprise and reveal later on. So, first things first, Mr. C. Diesel, please tell the lovely people here what your actual name is.
My name is Julio Vegara Nega Montoya Montoyas. I'm Dominican by trade.
can somebody get 6 seconds of the song? We know what your name is. We know what your name is.
Fair enough. My name's charliewilson. Nice to meet you guys. How you doing? I'm a good old Georgia boy from Middle Georgia.
Right on. And so you are from, like you just said, good old Georgia boy. Are you actually born and raised in Georgia? Did you move to Georgia? How'd you get there?
Funny enough, I was born in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. So when I was born, my grandfather was still in the military at that point. He was in the army, and some fuck shit happened with my biological father or whatever else. My mom took me, and she went and lived with my grandparents for a little bit, and we traveled around. So I was born in Kansas. I believe I lived in Washington State for a little bit, and then I think we stayed in Alabama for like a smidgen, and then came back home to Georgia when my grandfather retired.
The real meat and taters of this, of course, is how you first came to be a blurred. What was your the very first thing that got you into blurred culture, anything at all?
So it'd have to be probably just cartoons to start with. Just growing up watching early Cartoon Network stuff, so seeing Samurai Jack, watching Justice League series, Powerpuff Girls, all that stuff, like all the classic stuff, Johnny Bravo, the Grim Adventures of Billy Mandy. So I just started off just watching that stuff, and then slowly around the age of 7 is when I got my first PlayStation 2, so I got my first gaming console, and my stepfather bought Dragon Ball Z Budokai for me for my first game ever that I ever played. And up until that point, I'd never watched anime. I didn't know what anime was. I just assumed Dragon Ball was just a video game at that point. So he kind of explained the shit to me, because obviously Dragon Ball Z is like a big game, or not even a big game, it's just a big show within the black culture for whatever reason. Like the black communities love Dragon Ball. So he would do sketches of Super Saiyan 3 Goku, and it would look badass, and I'd ask about it and shit like that. He would just tell me more about it until he got me the game, and then I started proceeding to watch the shows. I found out it came on later, after Cartoon Network went off, and then Toonami came around. So that's when my mom finally let me started staying up later to watch that. So then I started watching Dragon Ball, and that's kind of where I started the transition into more anime-ish stuff. So I started cartoons and then anime soon after.
Toonami, and by that point, had been canceled off of Cartoon Network. You got replaced by Maguzi, which came on daily, and then you got into it when it came back to Saturday nights. But initially, Cartoon Network, was on daily. Like you got an episode of Dragon Ball Z every day.
Yeah, and it was on. So that's the beauty of the Then and Now podcast, is the introductions of it. Because I was originally in high school and in college when Toonami was like really took its prime. Like, I mean, with the very first run of Dragon Ball Z, where they went through the whole Namek saga up to Frieza and all that kind of stuff, happened when I remember I was my freshman year, people going crazy for it. And it's funny to think that roughly, I don't know how many, 15 years later, that's when Dev gets first introduced to it, because it's the same thing. Your gateway was Dragon Ball. It was either through the video game, then the series. So it's really cool to think about that.
I lied. I forgot. The Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies came out initially, but at that point, I just liked Spider-Man. I didn't really connect that to anything else. It was just Spider-Man. So like my mom painted our room blue. We got like Spider-Man fat heads, toys. So we love Spider-Man, and that's why I started watching cartoons and shit. So it did start with Spider-Man first. That's when it was first. I
And
forgot about that.
it was also Spider-Man for me, but it was the '92 Spider-Man and not
Spider-Man animated series.
Mhm.
the atrocities.
So that's
I'm not doing
that
that
is
today. This is
yeah.
not that
But I
episode.
love that it's the same things for most of us.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you have gone and watched the things that we grew up with, that Otis and I grew up with, like for example, Spider-Man the animated series. You've seen that now, the original one.
Oh yeah.
So how'd you get to that? How'd you see that?
Again, my stepfather he grew up watching all this shit, and he was kind of similar to our friend Craig, where he grew up watching this stuff but didn't know there was like a community of black folks that liked it as well. So he would like tell me about the stuff and I would go find it. At that point, it was, I think Disney would play reruns of that show like late at night. They play reruns of the Spider-Man the animated series, and they would play that. They play the Fantastic Four the animated series, the Silver Surfer the animated series, and the Incredible Hulk animated series.
Oh, Disney XD, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Disney XD. I remember that. Yeah.
So I was rewatching all those like back to back.
What I love about that, what I love about that too, is how you're a stepfather who is. Wait, how old is your stepfather?
He is 38. No, he's almost 40. He's not 40 yet. He's about to be
Yeah,
40.
he's younger than me. That's the best part. So he's like, when he was growing up, he actually, I am older than your stepfather. So like everything, all the stories he has are pretty much my stories too.
And then with Marvel, again, as you guys know, I've talked about it before. When I played Marvel's Ultimate Alliance is when I really got into more Marvel stuff, because they gave so much detail on all the aspects of that universe and characters within that universe there. So I just sit there and like read through the comics and play through the game scenarios and stuff like that.
That's dope. That's dope. And going back to what your stepfather said before, so being almost like essentially a closet blurred. Is that what you were too? Did you know that there was? Because I don't know what it was like 20 years later. Also with the internet. The internet wasn't really around when I was first getting into these things. Were you able to find a community when you were young?
I found a community early on in middle school. Elementary school, we would all play with toys and shit like that, but it really wasn't like a nerd community. It was more so just like, oh, Spider-Man's cool, we'll play with him. But when I met my best friend Jeffrey, which I know Jeffrey at that point, I met Jeffrey in the 6th grade. That was the first time I met another black person that was into that same shit. And Jeffrey, that's how he got me into manga initially. He would bring his Naruto manga and his Spider-Man comics to let me read them during class and shit, and we would trade stuff back and forth. So I started getting into all that there in like 6th grade when I started to get, I would say community, because it was just him at that point in time. I wouldn't say I hid my nerddom per se, but I wouldn't make it known, because again, I had the physique of an athlete. I was fucking 6 foot in 6th grade and like around 200, 210 pounds. I've been huge all my life damn near. So people just assumed I played football and didn't really fuck with sports like that.
Yeah, that's being a closet blur. That's a closet blur.
Right.
Yeah. Which is fine.
Which I mean, I didn't like. I said like I didn't shy away from the conversations at all. It just never came up. Like the only time it would come up is
I didn't shy away from them, but they didn't exist.
I mean,
I didn't bring them up.
That's better than the experience of like having it come out and then your roasting session starts. So it's okay.
Yeah. It was a very. We won't get into my childhood, but it was a very different situation. And I mean, because when I was growing up, it was like you are either the coolest brother on the block or you're Urkel. There's no in between. So yeah.
So in taking that content in, like all the between anime, cartoons, comics, manga, what made you ever just get to a point where you wanted to start making content yourself? Like how did you get to that side of the transition?
Like very recently, I watched so much of it. I had a thing where I would go down rabbit holes. So I would see something that was interesting, and I would learn everything I could learn about it for like a month. So it went from like Greek mythology to the Power Rangers to Harry Potter to the Ninja Turtles. It'd be like one thing after another. I just learned everything I could about that one thing and then go to the next thing. And I loved watching interviews at that point. So I'd see what the creators would say about their thought processes on creating a character or what they think characters should be and shit. So I developed a critique in the sense where I would like I would formulate opinions and shit after taking all that information in. Funny enough, when I met you, and I met Otis around 2017, I think, or like late 2017.
Like 2016, 2017, somewhere around there.
Yeah,
we were playing 2K17.
Yeah. So when I met you, and I would like watch the content you guys were creating on, at the time, Nerds with Melanin was what it was called. And I would see they would have podcast shows on there, and And initially, I didn't have an interest in creating any of the content. It was just cool as fuck to just be a part of it and just like see how shit goes on. It wasn't until I had a lot more conversations with people that would be on the podcast where I was like, oh, these are regular ass people. Like, I can do this shit. It really started there, and then me trying to come up with ideas to make other shows better before I even wanted to make my own show. I'm like, all right, cool. I have these ideas to make their shows better. Why can't I just apply that to my own shit and create my own shit? I think 2 years-ish later is when Ethan came into the picture, in which you did some kind of business with him, and he got on the game with us to play something. And I had my whole life, I've always hung around older people in general and just loved to pick older people's brains. But it was one of the first times where I met somebody like Ethan where I saw a lot of myself in him, from like the mannerisms to like his thought processes on a lot of stuff. And I was like, all right, cool. It's like a fucking mirror of me. He's a couple generations older than me and has different experiences. Let me try to start a content, because I know I didn't have the ability to do it on my own yet, because it's really fucking hard to be in front of a camera by yourself and be entertaining. It's really fucking difficult. But in like having conversation with other people, it's innately entertaining, is what my thought process was. So I'm like, all right, let me ask Ethan if he wants to start this show with us. And then that's kind of how content creation kind of came about. It was a very immediate thing where I'm just like, light bulb went off. Like, I can do this shit.
And you told me before that you, growing up, it didn't seem feasible in a way that especially men of color could make, things like anime or comic books or video games. It just didn't seem like attainable. Now, having seen the things that you've seen and been around this industry in the way that you have, does it seem that much more likely that you yourself would like to do something like that? Create your own video game, create your own comic book, make your own show.
Oh, for sure. Obviously, at the point when I was watching all this stuff, I feel like independent content wasn't as easy as it is now. Like, you can make a YouTube channel or make podcasts and things of that nature, but as far as making it as high quality as like studios made it, I feel like it wasn't as easy, or at least people didn't know how to do it. So when I met Ethan and Otis, seeing the kind of content they were creating, I'm like, oh, their shit's already good. It's just like a couple of slight tweaks that can make it look professional, or make it look like the shit I was watching at the time. And what really got it for me was Nerds Millen did an interview with the voice actor. His name is Bo Billingsley, which y'all know him as well. He played Killer Bee, not Killer. No, he played the Raikage on Naruto. Played Jet Black on Cowboy Bebop. And watching his interview, this man was, I think, like 80 something at the time. And one thing that he said really stuck with me was that anything he had an interest in life, he just put in his time and went and did it. So he's like, I think he initially wanted to be a lawyer. He was like, well, before I go into law school, let me go knock out a year in the NFL. And then let me go knock out a year in the MLB. Now I want to be a voice actor. Now I'm going to do voice acting. And he would just go from anything he had an interest in or had a passion for and would do that thing. And that's kind of the mentality I wanted to have, in the sense of, I'm not going to half-ass anything I do. But before I'm in the grave, I want to say I did everything I had an interest in and did it at the best I could possibly do it at. And then I'm satisfied at that point.
I was kind of going to go, just put out on caveats, because like Charlie explaining those situations, it's makes everything sound so quick and seamless and easy. That was a 2-year process that he condensed into like a 5-minute speech there, and all that. Like, Charlie was exponential for like you pushed forward a level of culture into those podcasts, and then came and did this podcast, and then took up this year. So I just want to give you the flowers there for a second.
I appreciate that.
One thing that I like about this show and hanging out with you guys are some of my closest friends, is how the time spans have gotten shorter. To get where I am, I'm 40 years old, and then look back at it, Otis is about 10 years, a little over 10 years younger than me, and he's further along at his age than I was when I was his age, doing his things, being creative and making his own content and doing things of that nature. And you drop down another 10 years, almost roughly. That's where Charlie is, and he's even further along. It's kind of like, I like the idea that as we get younger, we're figuring out our passions faster and embracing them more. So that's a really good, that's actual progress. That in and of itself is a milestone we're celebrating too.
I know the point of this interview is to let Charlie talk, but
Right. Yeah.
Would you be willing to give officially the story of why you call Charlie Soups on here?
Of course. And it's directly related to this. It actually, Soups is short for Superman, but I'm gonna play the clip at this part. There is an episode of Superman the Animated Series where Superman is trying to face off against one of his villains called Carcoal. And Carcoal is a being that uses magic to fight. And Superman realizes pretty early on he can't beat him. He just can't do it. So he goes to Dr. Fate and asks Dr. Fate for help. And Dr. Fate's gotten pretty jaded in by being the DC Universe's version of the Sorcerer Supreme and fighting against all kinds of magical beings. He's like, and he pretty much tells Superman to F off. He's like, I'm not doing it. I'm too tired and be done with you. And Superman's like, well, you can F off. I'm gonna still do this. I'm not gonna let these guys, these magical beings that Carcoal's creating, destroy the world. And Superman goes off knowing that he was gonna get beaten, but he'd rather fight dying than let the world go to fall to shit. And I had been doing podcasts for a while, for a few years before I met Dev, and I had gotten very little return. It was very agonizing, and I had gotten kind of jaded myself. And when Dev initially asked me to join up with him to do this podcast, I was like, well, you're a friend of mine, and out of disrespect for you as a friend, I'll do this, I'll tag along. But I wasn't necessarily the most zealous about it, more passionate about it. But I said, F it, I'll go ahead and just be there. But then watching Dev's Soup's continual passion about it, it invigorated me to the point where I really got excited about it, and I actually really enjoyed it. And it reminded me of the exact moment in that episode of Superman the Animated Series where when Dr. Fate does show up, and at the end, Superman asks,
"What made you change your mind?"
You.
Something I said?
Something you did. You went back. You didn't stand a chance, but you went back. Till then, I thought it was only the forces of evil that wouldn't give up. I was wrong.
That's what Charlie did. Is he went back. He didn't stop. He never stopped doing his thing. So that was a long-winded way of saying he reminded me of Superman from Superman series. But
I appreciate it, dog.
Going back to Otis, what Otis, like, you clearly saw, I guess, something in Dev because you invited him to join you for the meetings and things like that. What was it that you noticed about Dev early on that made you think he was a good fit to have on the team?
Well, me being the type of person that I am, I'm usually the person keeping everybody else on tip, like keeping them on point, making sure that you're doing the things that are supposed to be done. And Charlie was always a person that held me accountable. Like, so that's something I always respect in people. If you are willing to do that openly, and not even for a second had an issue with it. We probably argue more than we talk.
Oh God!
Like, there is never a point in time where I'm leaving. It's like, man, this nigga sounds stupid. I don't think anything he said is right. Even if we disagree, you have valid points. So I'm not gonna brush off what you said.
For one thing, young people, and it's weird because I'm so close to y'all, but there's such a generational gap. Younger people, when they argue, oftentimes like to get personal about things or get off topic. Dev never does it. It's hard to that's what makes it hard to argue with him. It's like, yeah, I can't dispute what you're saying because you're actually saying actual things that are real.
I grew up in a black Southern household where yelling and cussing and calling people outside of their name is the norm. And if you don't do it, it's kind of weird. So I got to the point to where I got so tired of hearing people yell. Well, I get loud. I get loud because I feel like most people in our culture do. If you're not loud, you're not heard, especially in a large family. So you have to be loud to be heard. Yeah. But I never got loud with the intent of calling somebody outside of their name, or because in my head, when I call you outside of your name, I'm admitting defeat. So it's more of a competitive thing than anything else, because it means I ran out of valid points and my argument makes no fucking sense. So if I'm calling you outside of your name, it's to throw you off your game and kind of change topic and deflect shit. And then two, it's not respectful in my opinion. Like, I grew up, I did 4 years of ROTC in high school, and one thing I learned from Colonel Atkins is treat people with respect even when you're disagreeing with them.
What's your soul sole purpose in this army?
To do whatever you tell me, drill sergeant?
God damn it, Gump! You're a goddamn genius. That's the most outstanding answer I've ever heard. You must have a goddamn IQ of 160.
I can disagree with somebody on something, but that still does not give me the right to not treat them with the common decency of being a man, woman, child, human being in general. So I'm going to call you by your name. I'm going to call you what you want to be called. Or when we're to disagree, I may not like the conversation, but I'm still going to respect you as an individual first and foremost.
But I'm curious though, what is your personal goal? Like, would you like to have your own entertainment industry, basically? Would you like to run your own company? Do you want to be in this sphere professionally? Would you like to retire from this, or would you like to move on and do other things entirely? When
it comes to goals, I've said this for a while now. The only thing I want to be able to do first and foremost is to be able to, one, retire relatively young. So that means I have a lot of passive income. We had another military man here. They came to visit the school and kind of spoke to us, and he preached game on passive income and how he is a restaurant owner. He writes books, he does speeches and shit like that. And he was like, the number one thing he preached was, as you're working, create something that can make money for you. So when you're done working, you're never going to run out of money, because your money's going to make your money as long as you're smart with it. So my goal, and the one thing I love that kind of just fuses perfectly with me wanting to be a creative, is that when I create this content, it's out there forever. So if people want to purchase the content, support the content, I could be 70 years old and the content's still going to make me money. Like, George Lucas cannot walk outside of his house for the rest of his life, and he's still going to have millions of dollars coming in from Star Wars and anything else that he's done. Same thing with J.K. Rowling. Granted, we don't like it. She's going to make money for the rest of her life off of her thing that she created. But like I said before, I want to do a bunch of different things. I want to create a bunch of different things. If one thing gets me that way where I don't have to work anymore, if it's this, even, perfect. But my goal is to be able to retire relatively young and just create content because I enjoy creating content. I don't want to get to a point to where I'm in a financial bind and I have to make content in order to survive. Because at that point, for me, it's not genuine anymore.
Right.
Because I'm not creating it for the love of it. I'm creating it because I need to survive.
Passive income, there's a lot of parallels there, because that's something a concept that I didn't really learn until my senior year in college as well, and that's where you are. So we're pretty much on the same line there. But I mean, you're so much further ahead of me when it comes to the whole process of content creation. Content creation was even my goal leaving college. Period. But we'll get to that. So. Just again, more kudos to you of being online to getting to where you want to be.
So the funny thing that I think again plays into a generation thing, me even having an interest in content creation or building an online media thing was the era of content creation I grew up in. YouTube was a huge thing, and there are so many creators on YouTube that, again, like I said, are like, one in particular, I watched them from my sophomore year of high school up until like my freshman year of college. I just kind of stopped for whatever reason. Just Kidding News. You've seen a couple of their businesses before, Ethan. You say you've driven past it's kind of a boba place. I can't remember the name of the place or whatever else. But they started off on YouTube where these guys literally would record for 12 hours straight. They would have multiple guests come in, shoot multiple guest episodes, and they would drop like 2 to 3 videos every single day. So I'd come back from school every day, watch all 3 episodes, and these guys took that platform and transformed it into where they own multiple houses in LA. They created their dream businesses. I think one guy, Bart Kwan, created Barbell Brigade, which is a gym somewhere, I think, in that area. I don't know exactly, but you are there now, so you probably know. But they did all that stuff just from grinding really hard on YouTube content creation and building up that following. So I saw so many examples of people that just worked hard at what they were passionate about and got to a point to where they are financially stable at really young ages. Like, they all did that probably before the age of like 27, 28.
Right.
And they're making that bread.
That's great, though. That's awesome.
Yeah. So again, I saw a million examples of it. So I was like, oh, I can do that shit. They did it. I can do it.
Okay, so me knowing my interviewee, I got a couple questions to hit him with to see if they can make some decisions here. So we'll make it easy, start off easy. Cole or Kendrick?
Cole.
Wow.
Cole. No content. Cole for me, you bastard. Cole for me, I was a Lil Wayne fan up until 2014 in high school when he dropped 2014 Forest Hills Drive. And listening to that album, it really touched me in a different way because everything that he was going through in that album, I was kind of in the process of kind of going through at that point in time too. Whether it was Wet Dreams, which he's talking about this virginity story in that one, where again I kind of felt a similar kinship. Yeah, we have the videos that dropped. Yeah, but by the time this drops, y'all have seen that story by now. Even in the sense of how he just went through life, and like I had never seen an artist up until that point or listened to one where they were so vulnerable in their music. And well, Drake was kind of the similar way, but Drake was more so his relationship type stuff. But I hadn't dealt with any relationship woes up until that point in high school. A lot of Cole stuff was like him having to keep his image and his image being like looked down upon or like treated like dirt because he said how he felt.
And the only question I had left was just like, why is horror your favorite genre?
It's not my favorite genre. I love it. It's not my favorite. It's kind of a sick relationship I have with horror. I love horror so much because initially when I was little, it horrified me. No pun intended. Where I would have nightmares about like Freddy, Jason, and shit killing my whole family. I would like try to run and sleep in the same room with my mom, and she'd be like, "Nigga, if you don't get," so I'd like sleep at the foot of her bed without her knowing and shit. So initially, it terrified me, and then I feel like once around 13-ish, when I got 13 or 14, when I got to high school, I was like, "All right, let me watch some behind-the-scenes footage," and seeing how much fun and how great people like that. Again, for people that don't know, some of the best people you will ever meet work on horror movie sets. Like some of the best, nicest people are people that come up with ideas on how to kill people in the worst ways. I don't get it, but seeing people have fun and create their dream and seeing how all the stuff's done, I fell in love with the process, which then made me fall in love with the genre. And then watching more documentaries and more people talk about how horror like was a outlet for them. So it kind of changed my perspective on this just being some demonic shit to, oh, this is just a fun thing that people do where they get to have a creative outlet. And then I have even more of a passion for it now, just due to the fact I've gotten to meet a couple people that do what I enjoyed consuming, whether it's Danny or recently we interviewed Tom Devlin, Alex. Then
no, Alan. It's Alan.
It's Alan Max. I keep want to call this motherfucker Alex. Yeah. Alan, even him, like he did do a lot of horror stuff, but he did like the Ginger Dead Man stuff like that. But seeing like these are amazing people, see some of the best people I've ever met in my entire life, and they do this shit. So I just I fell in love with the community in the process, and then there and for the movies after the fact.
Right on. That makes perfect sense.
Again, too, another thing, it's like a general trend with me. Whenever people hate on a lot, I tend to give more credence to. Like horror, especially within like the black community, we watch the shit, but it's like, oh, that's the devil. You don't need to be watching that shit. Da da da. So I would see them like, why? They're having fun doing some shit, and it's not hurting anybody. And again, like I'm just whatever people hate on the most, I'm like, I mean, see why they're hating on it. It's because they're ignorant and don't understand the process, or they don't see people having fun doing this stuff.
Mm-hmm. These are rapid fire, no explanations, just answers. You ready? Mm-hmm. Ready for this?
Let's go.
All right, Ezio or Jon Stewart?
Jon Stewart.
Really?
Yeah.
Assassin's Creed or Mass Effect?
Mass Effect.
It's the correct answer.
I never thought about. I had to think about that one for a second. That's tough.
That leads to the final question. But let's cut it off. Matrix or Thor Ragnarok? Matrix 4.
Oh, Matrix 4 for sure.
Really?
Yeah.
That is.
It's y'all.
Okay.
We're ending on that.
Okay.
We're ending on that. And by ending on that, I mean our relationship, this podcast.
Yeah, this has been fun, man. I can't wait I'm glad we're doing this. It gives our fans some more insight on just us as individuals going forwards, and even new fans will probably come back and see these videos. So again, I thank you, my brothers, for following on this journey and being a part of this. I love y'all for that forever till I'm in the grave. And thank you guys for supporting this. Just consuming the content. Again, if you want to see more stuff like this, drop it in the comments. Let us know what you think. And again, like, share, subscribe, and thank you for tuning in to the Then and Now podcast. We'll see you guys next time.
Houdini.
Houdini.
Damn, Matrix 4?